here we are, two parents, two business owners, and we both have our cup of something special to start our day this morning.
Something with caffeine in it.
It's funny because today on our podcast, we're going to talk about the growth of business and how that impacts the complexity of needs that you have when it comes to your finances. And I can't help but draw the connection between the season of parenting that we're in. Jeremiah and I get to raise 4 kids, and we are in kind of a new, season, era of parenting.
Well, things are different, right? They're just different than they used to be. We don't have babies anymore. All of our kids are out of that baby phase. And I think their needs are different. The scheduling that we do with our family and sports and, gymnastics and all these things, like that's different than it used to be. Even like the conversations that the kids are ready to have is different. And so I think, we still have the same kids, right? We still have the same family, but it is changing.
Changed. Yeah.
Yeah. It's changing as things are growing. And I think it's important as we've acknowledged that, with our kids and to each other, like our family is changing appropriately. So it's growing. It's developing.
We are living in our car more. So our kids are ages 7 to 13 currently. And as Jeremiah was remarking, we've moved out of sort of the diaper and the nap phase. And that had its own, if this is like the Amazing Race, like it had its own obstacles and challenges. And now all of a sudden, as parenting is so fluid, you have arrived at a new season of parenting. And now I find that we're living in our car and we have a new goal for this season, which is don't leave any child stranded. May every child be in their bed at night. But, truly, I think that these new seasons of life necessitate new vision. And so the demands of the day sort of, force or impose this mindset to parents, like, let's just get through it. We just need to get through this next season. And I see how that's related to business owners as well. As you're building your company, many entrepreneurs literally put in blood, sweat, and tears, countless hours, sacrifice other things in their life to grow this business. That's indicative of kind of a season of parenting when you have newborns where you are like, we just got to get through this, right? With little sleep, and you're building these little humans. And then you arrive all of a sudden, unbeknownst to you, at kind of a different season that in some ways is more complex, and you still have this mindset of kind of like, let's just get through this, or let's just get through the next thing. And I find what is really compelling as we kind of shift into talking about as our work as business owners and with other business owners, like that moment to kind of move from denial into acceptance, and beyond acceptance into like, well, how do I make the most of this season? What is unique about this season that I've moved into as a parent or as a business owner, right? And how do I not just like wish the time away, but how do I actually squeeze it for all that it's worth?
Yep. I love that. And I love even the segue into business for parenting, getting through the toddler and the small kid phase. Like you said, sometimes it's just survival. But if you still had that mindset as your kids are growing, I remember there was a moment where I was helping one of our kids tie their shoe, and it was faster, of course, for me to tie it. And then let's get out the door so we can, go wherever we're headed. And they wanted to try and tie their shoe. And there's part of me that's like, well, I can just do it. Like, it's faster. But I had to slow down and let them tie their shoe. But then like a week later, they were doing pretty good at it. But I still kind of wanted to tie their shoe because, I was justifying to myself, oh, maybe I'll make it tighter or whatnot. But really, I wanted to be needed in that way. I wanted to be the one tying their shoes and preparing them. Then realized my job's changing and I could take a step back and they can tie their own shoe, and then getting comfortable with that. And I think the same thing happens in business. A lot of entrepreneurs, they're everything. They're making all of it happen. But as they grow in their own leadership, they realize, hey, I don't need to do this anymore. I can delegate this. I can empower a team member. I can take a step back. My role can change. And that can be very, very hard for some entrepreneurs. Some entrepreneurs are excited about that. Finally, I don't have to do this anymore. Others really struggle with letting go of some of the pieces that they liked doing, even though it was more mundane. And so I think you're coming about vision. What we're talking about today is the part of your business where you've had some success, where someone out there, they're doing well, the revenue's coming in, they're getting traction, they've hired employees, they're hiring more. But on the negative side, they're also seeing more taxes come in. What was working before is still working, but it needs to be resolved, it needs to be changed. And so as the success gets bigger, the problems get bigger, the concerns, but there's not just that they're bigger, they need to shift.
Need to grow up, so to speak. And
they need to grow up.
I love, if we can just like pause on that illustration for just a minute, because I think there's so much there, that idea that when your children are little and you can just tie their shoe for them. And then you come to a season where you understand, like, oh, they're old enough to learn how to tie their shoe. And what's required in that moment, number one, you have to resist actually just tying the shoe for them because that would be more efficient. And in
Mm.
many business owners' minds, it's like, well, I can do this better. And the answer is you probably can. You probably have more experience or you've done it up until that point. And so it literally is this kind of release and the requirement of patience and the requirement of slowness and the requirement of investing in that person to not only teach them, watch them, right? Learn, make it their own, set clear expectations. There's so much there, but the outcome, it can be more growth because now you've trained someone else to do that task that used to be on your plate. There can be just like wonderful joy in watching someone that you have had the opportunity to mentor, to teach, to bring onto your team, to watch them thrive and take ownership of a new task or activity or something really meaty, that is really a gift given. And so it's part of growing your own leadership. Anyways, I love that illustration. I also want to dovetail into this idea that like many of our listeners could be in that season where business is doing really well, it's growing, there's a lot of complexity there. Their personal life could also be changing. We're talking about our kids getting older and so what new daily activities are happening in our household, but it could be other relationships that you have. Oftentimes, the success of one person creates complexity, sometimes for the worse in other relationships. Let's just talk about a married couple where one might be really feeling empowered or stressed or lonely, right? And how does that inform the relationship when they get home? How is your partner doing in their career, or if they're not working? Are they included in the thoughts and the emotions that you're going through as a business owner? And so sometimes that complexity isn't just at work. It also pours over into your other key relationships as well.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I think there, as you go through that development, there's people who I like even the personal crossover to say, at one point the family, the household was making sacrifices so this business could succeed. Today, we're kind of talking about the moment where, hey, you decided to move. You decided to buy a bigger house because you can afford it now. You have the resources to do that. You can change your cars because they were getting older and you need new cars, right? We see the scenario of people that they're doing that. They're upgrading their life because they've wanted to. Now they finally have the freedom to do that. But what that does sometimes is put a little bit of strain on the business to say, hey, I feel like we're doing better and we've moved and we've done some other personal things that we wanted to, but like my taxes are bigger. I have the same stress and the payroll that just got bigger, right? So you have the same levels of stress, even though you're having the success, you're not always feeling it. So I think in this moment, it's a really good place to say there's probably a moment for someone in this, if you're in this season, it's time to start looking at where do you need to level up. And the biggest,
Mhm.
some of the complaints we hear is that it's more complicated. I'm just paying more taxes. They say I have advisors, but no one's talking to each other. I feel like the go between with my tax person and my investment person and the legal people and the business planning, like, and the entrepreneur can feel like they're trying to be in the business and kind of working on the business at the same time. And then they're pulled in their personal life. Right. And so it's a really good moment to say, do I need an upgrade? And that's
Mhm.
often where we first meet with clients, get to meet with this scenario to say, okay, you're ready for the next level of sophistication. And what I love about these is it starts not with your investment, or it doesn't start with, let me get a new tax plan. Those are needed, of course, but it starts in my mind with a vision. What does this next season need to look like? Where are we headed? And that can really shed a lot of light onto what are the next, 5 or 6 or 15 steps that are going to really tune up the business into what it's going to become.
Yeah. And practically speaking, we're talking about time away or hiring an executive coach to sit with a vision for a new season and how powerful that can be. Here's a couple questions for our listeners to ask yourself. For example, what would happen if I stepped away from the company tomorrow? What would happen? Would my family be protected? Is my family protected? What is my business actually worth today? What do I want the next chapter of my life to look like? And how much of my personal identity is tied to the business? These are just questions to chew on that might start to poke at this idea of a vision for the season that you're in and the season that you're headed towards. And just to dial in our expertise as financial planners is that our desire is to build a financial infrastructure that supports the vision, the current and the future vision of our clients. This is thrilling to us. And this is where a lot of our conversation becomes really expansive because we're not just talking about how to maximize business growth and business value, but we're trying to orchestrate all these different elements of your life together and build a financial structure that supports that. And to Jeremiah's point, maybe up until this time, things have been a little more simple, or you've been kind of just getting through. And you might have a team of professionals that you work with, but more often than not, they're very siloed. You might have a tax professional that you work with when it comes to tax season. You might have an investment manager that manages one or two investment accounts or a retirement account that you have, right? You might have an attorney that set up an initial estate plan for you, or maybe that's far down the priority list, but you know you need to get one, right? So, but the dream that we're headed towards is that you, as the visionary, don't need to spend your time anymore in all the details and all these siloed conversations with these one-off advice-giving professionals in your life. What you want to do is orchestrate it all together and have that team working to support you so you can go and grow into the current and the future vision, continue to grow the company or sell it and move on to the next thing, right? Like everybody's vision is unique. That's kind of the thrilling part of what we do.
And I think in this moment, there's often low hanging fruit, items that an entrepreneur has become an expert in their business. They're an expert in the sales, they're an expert in their products or their services, and as they should be. But there's areas in business life, there's areas in personal finance that you wouldn't know this stuff unless you worked in this. And we talk a lot about donor advised fund giving or appreciated stock giving. We talk a lot about how we can really tune up someone's tax profile that meets what they're going to be doing in life. If someone's not charitably minded, we don't talk about that stuff. But I do think there's some really great tune-ups that's kind of like level one. And then we look at, okay, where are we headed to? And that becomes the fun, like what you said, Laura, that orchestrated master plan to say, hey, in 5 years, I want to be at this point personally. In 10 years, I want to be in a spot where, like you said, I could retire, I could exit the business. That's what we're building to. And that helps inform a lot of those financial decisions like retirement plans and investment plans, but also informs decisions like who do I need on my staff? Do I need somebody who I can really build up that's going to run things in a different way that they're not ready to do it today, but in the years to come, they could become ready and what that would mean for you. So I think these are such fun conversations in the fact that it has to do with the dreaming, has to do with the hope, has to do with how do I take the success and the momentum I've built and really get to the next levels. What I see as the negative in this space is when somebody has done really well and they buy a new house, they buy some of the fun cars or toys they've wanted to, their kids are doing fun things. And when you kind of peel back the curtain or when their head hits the pillow at night, they feel stretched. There's no plan B. There's no backup. There's no what if. Everything has to keep working optimally to keep up their lifestyle. And when you are a young entrepreneur, absolutely, there's no plan B, right? You have to make this work. That's that drive that entrepreneurs thrive in. But as they get to a certain point, like that level of diversification to say, it's not just my business, it's my business and these accounts and this real estate. And that becomes really powerful. So when your head hits the pillow, you just go to sleep, right? You don't have to be worried about what tomorrow looks like in the same way that you were when you were just starting out.
And when you're a working professional, you find yourself to be highly capable, right? And you probably have a tremendous amount of capacity. And so you sit there and like Jeremiah was saying, like as your head hits the pillow at night, you're like, it's okay. Like I can do this. I can continue on. I did it yesterday. I'm going to continue. And that's that mindset that we don't realize we get in where we're just kind of getting through. And it's like, but wait a second, if we paused, what would be thrilling? What opportunities can we give to other people around us, right? Dan Sullivan has written a lot of books about who, not how, and 10x is easier than 2x. And, some of his concept is derived from this desire for freedom of time, freedom of money. How do you start to inch towards those things? And if they seem like super far off, that's okay. I think truly they are for most people because I think we continue to almost just acclimate and become just associated with our stress. It's just a part of who we are or our capacity, the things that we continue to carry on. But what could be true if you freed up some time in your life, right? What would that mean for you? Would that mean a new business, a thriving relationship, more time with your kids? a charitable or philanthropic venture, right? There's a myriad of different choices. So as you kind of graduate out of a previous job role or description and you give opportunity to other people around you to step into those places, what more could be true for you? And so this is talking about, again, kind of deriving vision and orchestrating a team of people around you. We talk on the business side, having a team of people that you invest in that continue to take on new tasks, but also personally having a personal financial planning team that can come around you, quarterback the infrastructure that's needed to support your goals going forward. And that's really I guess, the call to action of the time that we're spending here is like for those business owners that may or may not be aware that they're kind of graduating into a new season, right? How do we move from that kind of denial into acceptance of where we are?
Totally. Well, I feel going back to the family analogy of, with kids. I think people with young kids and middle-aged kids under 13 or so, the idea of getting out for a date night usually takes a babysitter, or there's some other things you have to coordinate to get like out on a date night as parents. But as kids get a little older, the idea that, well, this child's 16, they could just watch the other kids. We can just go. And I always laugh that we have friends who have parents with a little older kids, and the idea of just, oh, we're going to leave the house. We're just going to go and do a thing. The kids are fine. That's still foreign to us. That's something that we're not quite in that phase yet. And I think it's the same thing with this discussion on the business side of, as an entrepreneur, there's certain things you have to worry about. You have to have a babysitter at home, right? As far as for the family analogy. But there's certain moments as the kids grow that there's freedoms that you didn't know that you had. And I'll just hit on one. Most entrepreneurs I know, they've had a surprise tax bill. They've got to the end of the year and it kind of kicked them in the face and they realized, wow, I did so well, but my taxes are more than I thought they were going to be. There are people who no longer have that surprise. They've put in a plan. They understand what their taxes are going to be. They're not just reactive with their CPA, which is where most accountants we find they are. They're reactive to what happened during the year. Rather, they're proactive. They've transitioned to say, hey, in November and December, we do some tax planning with our advisors. We set up different levers that we want to pull to maximize our taxes. So when we get to tax season, we pretty much already know what it's going to be. We've already set the money aside. And in my mind, that is a more sophisticated, developed business owner, right? And there's a transition from being an entrepreneur, you're just trying to survive, and to being someone who can, say, oh, I know what my taxes are going to be. I'm not worried about it. There's a middle ground there. And that middle ground, there's a lot of people that get stuck with 5-6-figure tax bill that they did not expect. And it's indicative of you had some great success. Wonderful, fantastic. But you didn't yet have the infrastructure to allow you to really thrive in that. And that's that inflection point. We'll talk in a future episode about the other side of what do you do when you've established these norms, you've sophisticated your business and your lifestyle. How do you really get your business to do what you want? Come more lifestyle discussion. I think this is more maximizing what you've built and building a structure that supports where you're headed and not just the entrepreneur, I'm going to get it done. So I think that's a good illustration. I mean, tax bill, like I said, that's a common one that we get. People get surprise taxes and that needs to stop, right? As a business owner becoming more successful and more sophisticated, like there needs to be some proactive items there to make sure you don't have those tax surprises.
Yep. So as we round out this discussion, just to kind of recap sort of the call to action here, if you as a business owner, entrepreneur are listening to this and you identify with the idea of like, yeah, my business is growing, now what? Right? Taxes are becoming more complicated. I don't know what I should be doing with this money. I'm kind of feeling lonely or independent in making some of these decisions. Taxes seem bigger every year. I've got some legal issues I've never dealt with before, but revenue is doing well and life is going forward and I'll just keep on keeping on, right? The call to action here would be to pause, to consider where you are, to celebrate the growth in your business, but to start to derive a new vision for the season that you're moving into, embracing the complexity, embracing the needs that you have. There's wonderful juice to be squeezed from the moment that you're in, and it relates to all aspects of your life, not just as your business thrives. The goal is to make your family life or your personal life thrive, your key relationship, your personal financial plan, your, interaction and community, right? There's so many different aspects to life. How do we make sure that all of it thrives? And as you derive that vision, identify a team within your company, a team externally for your finances. How does this personally impact you going forward so you can maximize the benefit of this season and navigate what you anticipate will be the next season as well? If you need that team and you'd like somebody to talk to, come visit us here at Tricord. We'd love the chance to meet you. We have a few more things to let you know about before we go. Podcast reviews really help us to serve more people and get this information into the hands of the people who need it. Please leave us a review. Even if it's not 5 stars, we welcome the feedback.
And we invite you to let us know what topics you would like to hear more about, or what would benefit the people in your life who you're closest to. We have more resources online. Those resources are designed to help you share this great information easily with people in your life. To access those resources, please visit tricordadvisors.com.
Often we hear from clients that they wish they had talked to us sooner. If that's you, we'd be thrilled to see how financial planning can benefit your life. Email us at contact@tricordadvisors.com or simply click on the link in the show notes.
We love creating content that's useful, resourceful, and maybe even a little entertaining. We want to make this mega universe of financial topics and advice applicable and helpful to your life.
Remember, at Tricord Advisors, we are your future's best ally.